What's in the mind of artists when they draw? This video is about that. 4 artists drew 4 original artwork based on one common concept, and they share their thoughts on it. Today I am joined by bitbrain, MetRiko and Riptide. Links to these amazing guys are in the description. Today's concept consisted of these points. The character is in the front, landscape in the distance, and emphasis on the mood, not on the character. Enjoy this episode of our Deviation Jam.
I started by creating the background and working my way forward to the foreground. I name all my layers in Sprite and I started drawing the basic shapes. I also tried to make enough space for the foreground, so I created a little river and then I attempted to draw a little character in a tree. That was inspired by a pre-existing Witcher 3 artwork. And I first tried the standing position with a little sword, but then I thought, okay, it would be better for Geralt to sit, and I accidentally started shading already. But I then decided to just do 2-color shading on everything. I also played around a little bit with shading there, but then I noticed real quick that's too bright, so I cut it down a little bit, and then I started again from the background, and this time introducing additional colors. And sun is aggressively red-pink, and this will become later a little bit more obvious what I had in mind there. But I shaded the mountains and also added a little bit of fog. And creating fog in pixel art is quite difficult. I actually used alpha and cheated a little bit. Because it's a speed painting, I just had 1 hour. I also added a little bit of clouds, shading there, layered them a little bit to give this perception of depth. Then I worked my way forward to the grass plains, and the important bit there was to add the reflections, and I tried to figure out the right color for the reflection. Once I had that, I added also a little bit of shadow to give this illusion, and then I added a little bit of pixel art trees. It's a neat little trick. You can basically draw a line and then bump it up a little bit. Then I continued with adding background clouds because I think the mountains looked a little bit too aggressive, and I also tried to make the transition a bit nicer between the tiny mountains. And then I noticed that these front mountains are not really realistic because the sun would hit it, so I added a little bit of pink shadow there and also added a little bit of backlighting to the back mountains because their contrast was way off. And once I finished that, I decided to add grass in the foreground. Basically, I used 3 different shades of green and then tried also to define a little bit the shape of the grass. I also added an overlay layer to wrap the roots and also Geralt in grass to make the vegetation really seem alive. I then decided to add a front light, so basically the light from the mountains reflects on Geralt's hair and also on his armor. Then I also decided to give the tree a little bit of love by adding a new highlight shade, and this really makes the tree look more alive. I then thought about adding a backlight to the tree root, but I discarded that real quick because that didn't look nice, and instead I focused on refining the shape of the tree. I then also had the idea to expand the tree a little bit with leaves, but I discarded that as well, as you will see. And very important finishing touches, so I noticed the time was running out, so I tried to clean up some of the background bits and tried to make it a little bit nicer. And here you can see now I attempted this grass leaf branch, but I think I discarded it because it looked weird and I was running out of time basically, and for it to make it look nice I had to introduce more of them, and this lonely branch there looked just weird, so I actually removed it again. I then refined the grass a little bit, still not to the level I would like it to, but I think it's fine for 1 hour. I also refined the shape of the tree a bit, and yeah, that's my painting.
Hello pixel art enthusiasts, it's me, MetRiko, a computer science student, future indie game developer, and Metroidvania lover. But let's back to the main topic. I knew I wanted to draw night scenery, so I decided on palette based on dark shades of blue, mixed with some purplish colors between. I put characters in the center of canvas, and right now I'm drawing a young girl that is pointing on the sky. Behind her is someone much older. I'm bad at drawing outlines, so my style is just to draw a raw sketch with things and put some colored blobs here and there and then shape it to make it look like something at least. In this one I wanted to try a little bit different perspective, and instead of faraway landscape I tried to focus on things around characters. On the right side I put a tilted tree and I started shading it. I knew leaves shading will make it looks like a cloud, so I added a small hollow in tree to make sure it's a tree, not a cloud. Big brain moment right there. I have no time for details, so the upper part of the tree has been made with 3 simple steps. I started with some big brush strokes, taking every color from palette to create a gradient-like effect. Then I used a smaller brush on the gradient's edges to create more dynamic shapes. At the end I added some additional highlighting by adding some small distorted blobs in few places. For things like that I really like using a magic wand tool to make sure I will add the highlights in the right place. Time for the background. I had a really clear image in my head of what I want to draw. First of all I separated background space with dark blue color. Then I blended it with the rest of the background to make it look more like a water surface. For that I used a small random brush strokes on the edge of dark blue semicircle. My idea was to make that the girl in the center will be pointing on something magical in the sky, and the viewer will be able to see it as reflection in the water surface. Magical creatures are done, so to make sure it's night I added stars. Many stars. For that I used special A-spray shortcut, Ctrl B, which creates brush from selection. It's very useful feature, especially for repetitive jobs like that. I realized I have a little bit more time left than I expected, so I decided on to add a moon. Just an orb with some craters. So time for the final touches. I added more light colors here and there on the ground. When my brain told me the tree is breaking composition, so I added little creature in the water on the left to make it more balanced. Now I started working on the water and reflections. But I'm not happy with it, because I didn't have time to add proper water distortion effect. And at the last moment I realized the girl is pointing in the bad direction, so I have to move the creatures a little bit to fix it. The final result is not bad actually, and aside from lack of distortion effect on the water surface, I could call it done. Thank you very much Ivess for this challenge, that was so much fun.
Hey everyone, my name is Riptide and I'm a game developer and pixel artist, so I'm really excited to be able to participate in this video. Now, right away you can see that I tried going for the outline style, but I quickly realized that this would take too long. I lost a few minutes, but got back on track by quickly making the background and foreground. Now I should note that I committed pretty much every sin an artist can make. First, I didn't know what I was drawing. Second, I didn't have a reference image, and third, I decided it would be a good idea to deviate from my preferred art medium and try working without outlines. This maybe wasn't the best idea since I only had 1 hour, but I thought I might as well challenge myself here. I knew I needed a character, foreground, and background, so on the fly I decided I would make a sort of lake inside of a cavern with the player standing or swimming in the middle of the lake. I spent a pretty good time getting the details right since I was able to make the background relatively quickly. This proved to be a mistake later on though, as it meant that I didn't have enough time to properly make my character. With about 12 minutes left, I only just started making my character and I barely had enough time to add in some final details to the foreground and background before my hour was up. It was definitely a challenge to work at 192 by 108 pixels in a style I had never tried before. Regardless, I learned a lot in this hour, and I think it's good to see someone struggle, because the reality is that this is what happens to most people, and most of the time, you don't get to see people's failures because they don't share them. Bad or good, here's the final piece. And once again, huge thanks to Ivess for hosting this awesome jam.
Again, it was important to first come up with what I'll draw, so about 40 minutes prior to drawing I spent just looking for references. One of the fears you can have as a creator is the fear that you'll be labeled a thief if you make something similar to something created by someone else. To be honest, it actually happens very rarely unless you deliberately want to steal. Nevertheless, I was afraid I would be called so, and therefore I decided to use as much as 3 drawings as references. From one I took the samurai, from the other I took the tree at the side, and the hill from the third one. I decided to experiment a bit and chose a minimalistic palette that consisted of 8 tints of one color. I found out that it boosts your creativity in regard to drawing shapes, because it forces you to find a way to distinguish without adding any other colors. Another thing is that, funnily enough, I accidentally changed the samurai's pose, but I liked it. He is looking to the side on the reference image, but on my painting, he is slightly in the 3/4 perspective. And now, speaking of time, the work was sketched in just 20 minutes, the rest was just pure polishing. One of the struggles was to draw some landscape to this bottom left side of the painting, without adding too many details. It would be a problem with too many details, because then the viewer's focus would be not on the samurai or the far, but on these lakes and hills, which are just decorations. All in all, I drew my artwork in 40 or 50 minutes. As I'm looking at it, sure, I see some imperfections that I would change if I could, like the hill that should be a bit lower and the samurai should be shorter. However, I don't really complain because I enjoyed the process. It simply felt great to draw. That's it! Remember, you can be an artist, and you are creative. While we have small differences, we share much more. Thanks bitbrain, MetRiko and Riptide for joining me today. Don't forget to check them, links are in the description. And, by the way, if you still haven't seen the previous episode, go check that out. For that one I collaborated with Artindi, Spoonsweet and Kai Shido. What have you discovered for yourself in this video? Let me know in the comments below, I will love to read them. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it, share and subscribe. It was Ivess, and until next time.